Stand by for streaming to begin. Hello, hello. Welcome to a raging attempt at strangeness, live streaming tech policy writing. I can't imagine why you would want to watch this. It seems somehow more exciting than watching trains go nowhere, and yet somehow more boring at the same time. Yes, thank you for tuning in. If you have done so, otherwise, thank you for watching it later on. The goal for this is really just, I felt like putting this out there to see, you can see what's going on behind the scenes. This is the kind of stuff that we do late at night when everyone else is having fun and having lives. We at EFA and other digital rights organisations sit here and write tech policy documents because someone has to do it, I suppose. So the one that we're dealing with at the moment is a document, or is a consultation called on the Australian Data Strategy. So let me see if I can get the streaming stuff to work, and we can put this in front of my face, or actually my face will be behind it, but here we go. There we are. So up that way, that way, right, that way. Over there, using the magic of television, is the Australian Data Strategy, and this is the consultation that is, as you will see, due tomorrow, which is why I'm doing it right now. Always fun. You don't see my cursor on this version. That's a shame. Never mind. I'll have to figure out how I can show you my cursor in future. So you can go along to the URL yourself, which is AusStrategy. What is it? AusStrategy.pmc.gov.au, and see it for yourself. And that's what we're going to be dealing with. And here's one I've prepared earlier, which is the document that we're going to be playing with this evening. This is a template that we've set up that I've just copied and pre-populated with a bit of our usual blurb that we put on all of our submissions. And I've not really done a lot of work on this one yet, so you get to see how the process works, or at least how I do it. I don't know really what I'm doing. I've made this up as we go along. It seems to work for us most of the time. Hopefully you will find this interesting to use yourselves. So where to begin? Well, it's generally a good idea that you start off by reading the actual submission that you're supposed to be, the document that you're supposed to be talking about. So there's a whole bunch of documents in this one. Here's the exec summary and what it's generally about. Enabling data use and trust and protection. This all sounds very good, but the detail's often not quite as good as what it sounds like at the top end. So let's go in. Here's one I prepared earlier. So there's the action plan for this thing. There's the summary. Here we go. This is the snapshot. I think this is the summary of what it's all about. You can see the URL down here at the bottom if you are keen, just above my head, just there. If you can zoom in on that and get yourself organized in time, you'll be able to go and do something about this shortly. And so we can see here that the strategy is about, the data strategy sets our vision. That's not really what a strategy is for. A strategy is supposed to be about not just the vision of where you want to be, but the plan for how you're going to get there. But most strategy documents don't ever bother doing the plan part. Aspirational stuff is far more interesting, apparently. So the vision is, what have we got here? A national ecosystem of data that is accessible, reliable, and relevant, and is able to be easily used to empower our national endeavour towards a data-driven society. So it's going to be used to empower an endeavour towards. That's about 4 levels of indirection, so I'm not sure whether that's actually going to do anything in the end, but interesting idea. The data strategy seeks to maximize data's value, protect it to build trust, and enable its use. I note that there's nothing in here about not collecting things that you don't need and not doing things you shouldn't, but that's rarely something that happens when we're talking about data. Anyway, an action plan. Sounds good. We should do actions. What have we got here? Maximizing the value of data, trust and protection, enabling data use. These seem to be the pillars that this thing is built on. We need to improve economy-wide data use and reuse, delivering outcomes for individuals and businesses, and helping governments to deliver more effectively. Deliver what is not explained, but okay. The benefits data can bring, breaking down unnecessary barriers, recognizing the importance of data throughout its entire life cycle. All very... Data is extremely important, clearly. Hosting data securely, improving understanding of cyber threats, both within and outside. Keep data safe and secure. That's an idea. We also use and manage data in appropriate ways. Fabulous. Progressing reforms to strengthen privacy protections online, including in new technologies like AI. Not quite sure how using AI strengthens privacy protections, given that AI needs to be trained on massive data sets that are generally collected from people without their consent, but sure. We could do some of that. Keeping data safe. That's what a novel concept. While having a plan in place to act quickly and effectively to respond to data breaches, as compared to what we do now, I suppose. And what else are we doing? Enabling data use. Yes, fair enough. Whatever. Making data available. Progress work to build a new front door to guide Australians and businesses towards the right data to suit their needs. Implement the data availability and transparency scheme. Important point on that one. You can already share data. It's already something that you are totally able to do. The data availability and transparency scheme specifically provides you with a way of bypassing existing privacy protections. That was the whole point of it, because trying to unpick the current set of regulations around what you can and can't do was deemed to be too hard. So rather than deal with that, we just put in a bypass mechanism. I'm not sure how bypassing the existing controls that say that you're not allowed to, for example, just share the census data with whoever you like, facilitates trust and confidence. But I've had this argument with government on multiple occasions, and no one seems to really care about that, because data availability and transparency is all about the data that governments have on us, you and me, not about the data that governments have on themselves. They don't really want us to see any of that. Give Australians better visibility and control of their data through the consumer data right. Well, I don't want to have a right to consumer data. I'm not a consumer, I'm a citizen. I have human rights, not just data rights. And this whole idea of consumer data right, that's actually came out of the Productivity Commission, which took a very economic view of things and treats data as some kind of economic intellectual property type thing over which you can have ownership rights, which is a really narrow and not particularly useful way of viewing data, particularly when it comes to privacy, when you have data about someone, which isn't just data that you've created. Anywho, creating the infrastructure we need, develop the data assets we need, like the National Disability Data Asset. Asset for whom? One point that I'd like to make on all of this is that data is not just an asset, it's also a liability. Data, some people say data is the new oil. Data is also the new asbestos. When you have a big pile of all of this data, you have to keep it safe and secure. Well, you should, anyway. So it would also become the National Disability Data Liability when it's not done very well. You might like to think of some data sets of your own that are actually liabilities rather than assets. Again, the very economic view of the world where we have a balance sheet of assets and apparently never any liabilities. And we don't have flows either, which is a bit weird. National Disability Data Income Statement might be an interesting one. Greater portability and certainty about data, make it easier to share, make it property rights for data. Yeah, that's a real problem. I have a big issue with this idea of property rights for data. ownership and property rights. Like we already have that for other kinds of data, other kinds of intellectual property, which is made up. It's an artificial constraint over who is actually able to deal in that data. And generally, it tends to accumulate in very large capitalist organizations that own a bunch of other people's intellectual property because they buy it and then no one else can use it and they are deprived from using that. In this case, it somehow seems to be trying to create the idea that it's actually good for you because you'll be able to make money out of people spying on you. Like, that's to miss the point. It's like, no, I don't want you to spy on me at all. Or if it is necessary for me to share information about myself with you, then you need to be doing it for my benefit, not for your own. And it shouldn't just be a financial transaction. It's a duty of care, for example. Like when you go and share information about yourself with your doctor, the only reason you do that is so that the doctor will help you. You don't want to be selling that information about yourself to the doctor so that they can give you medicine. Like, that's not how this works. Or it's not how it should work anyway. This is a bit of a capitalist dystopia, quite frankly. A modern data system, as distinct from the data system that we have already. Data expertise and capability across the workforce through the data professional stream. Sure, okay. Like, computers aren't exactly a new idea, but we haven't ever felt the need to have data professionals until now because now it's cool and sexy here in, what is it, the second decade of the 21st century? Mainframes have been in the APS since the 60s, but sure, okay. Build the right tools and systems for government data maturity. Yeah, it's a nice idea. I think that's an excellent thing that you should probably start to do. And when are we going to have this done by? 2025. It's 2022. Given that you haven't really managed to do it that well since the 60s, I think this is possibly ambitious. But okay, let's dive into this in a bit more detail, shall we? Before I do that, let's just pop back over to here. And am I still seeing the data strategy? Oh no, it's a little bit, the stream is lagging behind me a bit, so that's why I'm not seeing it there. Okay. I'll just check to see if anybody's bothering to comment or do anything. Probably not. I'm not expecting there to be many people here watching. Where are we? Where is everybody? Oh, you can see all of my stuff here if I do this. Yeah, these are all my apps. Exciting apps like OBS Studio, which I'm using to stream this out. Well worth it. I quite like OBS Studio. Okay. Let's dive into the document then. What do we got here? So we should probably, I don't want to look at the action plan. Not yet anyway. Let's have a look at, what have we got? The data strategy, that's the overview. Here we go. All right. Contents. Minister's forward. Yeah, we can skip all of that. Executive summary, our vision, and so on. Was that the minister's forward, or did I skip that? Oh, it's on the title. Okay, so we've already gone for that. Righto. Executive summary. Data is a valuable national asset. Righto. Proved this in its response to the initial COVID-19 outbreak when it leveraged private and public data to respond to the health and economic effects of the virus. Yes. Let's not relitigate that, shall we? Okay. The Australian Data Strategy signposts. I hate jargon. The Australian Government's data intent and efforts over the period to 2025, which is in 2.5 years. Cool. The document considers both public sector data, which is managed by the government, and data in the broader economy. The government enables data users and regulates its use and sharing. Supported by a living action plan. Tangible measures. Does it? Let's have a look at that. Where is that action plan? Here's the action plan. Let's have a look at the tangible measures that are allegedly involved. Maximising the value of data. To whom? Delivering a new front door to access Australian government open data, communicating about data better and implementing the data value. So we will make data available. Okay. Hopefully not all of it. Trust and protection. We will set the guardrails for a modern data economy by ensuring we have robust and modern cyber security and privacy settings and giving Australians better visibility and control of their data. See, that's a goal. That's not an action. And these are not exactly measurable. But did they mention measurable? Action plan. Tangible measures. Tangible measures. What is a tangible measure? Something which is actually not intangible, but it can in fact be found, held, grabbed, and measured. Robust and modern. That sounds a bit intangible to me. Better visibility. Better. How do you measure better? Are they going to measure better? Better compared to what? Enabling data use by developing the data assets we need and enabling greater portability and certainty. Cool. Aspirational, empty statements. Yep. Better skills, blah, 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 blah. All right. The government is starting work to transition Data.gov.au to becoming a one-stop shop. So, okay, that's an end date. So they're going to make sure that the only place that you want to or need to go is Data.gov.au by the end of this year. And it's June 29. And the consultation on this ends tomorrow. Okay. Interesting choice. We will set the guardrails for a modern data economy. Ongoing. Yes, okay. Good-o. Consumer data right expansion. Expanding the control that individual and business consumers have over data about them that is held. Began in the banking sector and is being implemented. Oh, yeah, so there's a lot to whinge about all of that. That's CDR, the whole idea of open banking thing, that was largely... It's very difficult for you to move your bank account from one place to another, and they've done that on purpose. So the idea here was that you'd be able to tell people that you allow a competitor to your bank to have a look at some of your transactions. CDR wouldn't be needed if the banks had bothered implementing an API that you could use to interrogate your system, interrogate their bank to be able to pull out data for you. This is a more convoluted way that the banks have a lot more control over because they didn't want anyone else to have a look at any of this data because, quite frankly, the data that a bank has on you is incredibly valuable, and they know that, and they absolutely don't want their competitors to get a hold of it. This allegedly makes it more possible for you to authorize others to have access to some of your data, but it's very constrained, and I don't know that it's actually working all that well. So energy sector's going next, teleco is going to go next. And again, it's all about enabling you to kind of move your account from one of them to another, but without actually being like it hasn't enabled portability between services. That's not really what it's about. Anywho, Privacy Act review, end date of 2022, good. It's been running for about 3 years already, so it started, actually, when was it? 2018, I think it started, so it's been quite some time. And it's well overdue. The review will put forward options with a view to ensuring, so this is all, we plan to review and make some proposals by the end of this year, but we won't actually change anything. Watto, National Disability Data Asset. Here we have a concrete thing. We've committed $40 million over 4 years to extend the existing national disability. So this is a thing that already exists. A national asset of linked de-identified data. Okay. De-identification is really hard. And a linked de-identified data set isn't really de-identified. Because it's been linked with other stuff, you will be able to re-identify people in this data asset, in this data set, particularly if you're able to cross-reference it with other information, which is publicly available, and you will. The reason they're saying that they want to do this is that it'll streamline data sharing to deliver faster and better national insights for better outcomes for people with disability. This gets said a lot, that I question, and we genuinely question, whether you need more data in order to take action to create better outcomes for anybody, let alone people with disability. Like, there's lots of stuff that we already know that we could be doing We don't need more data about it. We just need to do something about it. But that's never what happens. There's always a quest for more information and more research and more thinking. We have to spend more time planning before we actually lift a finger to do anything to help people with disability. I don't think that we do. I think that you could just ask them and they would tell you, and in fact have done already in much of the research that we've already done about exactly what we would need to do. This is more about people, I don't know, they have this idea of a data utopia where you'll just have this perfect system that you can query and it will give you all the answers for what you need to do instead of having to go and talk to any disabled people because they're icky or something. I don't know. It's, yeah. I really don't like this idea of this data asset collection, you know, they're not like Pokemon. Don't collect them all, put them in a big pile and stir it until it tells you what to do, which you then won't do anyway. Greater portability and certainty. Defining ownership and property rights for data and expanding domestic and cross-border data flows. I would say that we need to actually reduce domestic and cross-border data flows because we have lots of transnational tech companies who are spying on us constantly. And that goes counter to the privacy review that we are setting up here, which is actually to reduce the sharing of data and remove some of the cross-border data flows. But they reckon that they're going to do that by the end of 2023. Note that this will happen by the end of 2023, but all that's going to happen with the Privacy Act review is that it's going to recommend some stuff by the end of this year. The government will measure APS data maturity by the end of 2023. Note that that means that they don't do it now. They don't already do that. Again, despite the fact that computers have been a thing that have existed for some 60 years. Embedding SES data accountabilities. They will develop guidance on putting this in. Good-o. Improving data capability. Embed approaches developed through the data professional stream. This is all workflow stuff. Sort of an HR structuring thing that they're trying to do to put some rigor and structure around it, which is internal to government. This really depends on that. Like, they've already decided what the outcome should be. So improving data capability is all about, according to the government, that they want to implement the program that they've already designed. So they're saying that we will do the thing that we'd already planned to do by the end of 2023. Whether or not that actually improves data capability or not, I don't know. It doesn't really say how will you be measuring this. Data value measurement. New and enhanced data collection and reporting methods simplify the measurement of the economic value of data to the Australian economy. Again, economic value of data. So I should probably be making some notes on this. Let's look at this. So the economic value of data to the Australian economy. Again, everything is done through this lens that the economy is the only thing that matters. Money is the only thing that we should care about. So let's go over here, and I'm just going to go onto my notes. I'd already made a few. Let's add, and some others have already made some notes as well. Thank you to those people who have helped us. I'm going to add some more notes in here, which is, now where was that? That was on, oops, page, let's see, what page were we on? Oh, it doesn't have pages, or does it? Oh no, page 2, I guess, apparently. Okay, page 2 of the action plan. Data value measurement. All right. Data value measurement is expressed in purely economic terms. There is value in data that is not purely economic. And this value should be included in any assessment of Australia's use of data, I'll say. It shouldn't just be about how much stuff is worth in monetary terms. That's a really narrow and not actually very, very useful way of viewing data. But it's very common. It's like, if we can't measure it in terms of dollars, then it doesn't exist. Economists are, well, not all economists, hashtag not all economists. A lot of them are not very imaginative, unfortunately, and they struggle to measure certain things. Some of it's hard. Like, it is difficult to measure some of these things, but, you know, the old aphorism, not everything of value. Is it not everything that counts can be counted? Not everything that can be counted counts. New international data policy function. Position on all global data initiatives. Yeah, righto. International engagement by the end of 2022. Well, that may have been thrown into chaos a little bit by the machinery of government changes from a new government, but who knows. Data underpins every policy the Australian government undertakes. Yes, possibly. However, I would suggest that data/statistics is often used a bit like a lamppost, as the old joke goes, for support, not illumination. This list provides examples over the period to 2022-25. Digital Atlas of Australia. Dynamic displays of data on an interactive map of Australia available and accessible to businesses. Righto. Available at the end of 2022. Depending on why that matters. Like, we already have the Australian Bureau of Statistics. A digital atlas is like, what does that even mean? Dynamic display of data on an interactive map. Maps are useful for certain things, but for a bunch of stuff you need tables. Like, who cares? Like, GIS stuff is sort of useful, but if I can't have access to the raw data, I can't actually do anything programmatic for it. But it looks shiny. Like, I can browse around. It's like, yeah, that might be useful, depending on what format that's in. You know, is the map compatible with other GIS systems so that we can integrate it with other things? Who knows? Exploring for the future. I wonder whether this is actually happening now, because again, change of government. 125 million over 4 years to expand the Exploring for the Future program. Yeah, minerals, energy, and groundwater. Okay, so that's giving the existing miners a big bunch of cash on exploration stuff that they were already doing, because that's their business. So why we would do that for something which is already heavily subsidised, I don't quite understand, but sure, okay. We're going to do what we already said that we do. Data availability and transparency. Yeah. It's a not very good idea, but okay. Data place, whole of government digital platform. Yeah, that'll be fun. Another one. Maybe we should put all of the digital platforms into one place. We can call it a multi-function digital polis. Making government data assets discoverable. Pilot program. 16 million for a pilot by 2025. So we're going to try to start figuring out how to make data assets discoverable by 2025. This is probably worth noting. Improve discoverability. So we're going to develop data inventories for 20% of Australian government agencies. So this has a target. So 20% of Australian data. What is it? Of Australian government agencies I can't type tonight, will be surveyed, explored. What do they call it? Developing data inventories. Data inventories developed by 2025, whatever it is. And it's not even, so in 3 years, 20%. Now, this might be unfair, but if we do it linearly, often it's not linear. It'll be slower to do the first part, and then you end up with an S-curve for adoption. But if we say it's linear, and it takes 3 years to do 20%, then multiply that by 5. So that means it'll take 15 years to have data inventories for all existing government agencies, but that ignores all the technological change that will happen in the next 15 years. Like, yes, we need to do this, but taking 15 years to figure this out, like, think back 15 years ago. AWS launched in, I think it was 2006, officially. It was other development happening between 2000 and then, but like, I think it was S3 was the first service which launched somewhere in 2006. I was looking at it earlier today. So that means so that's what, 18 years? 16? No, 16 years. So in 15 years, AWS went from one service and a tiny thing to being the largest global, data provider in the entire world. That's the scope of change. Like, consider what else has gone on in the world in that time, but that's the scope of change over that time frame. So this data strategy is both overly ambitious in some directions, and not nearly ambitious enough in others, when considering the rate of change of different aspects of society. I would say some things change quickly, some things don't. Like, human nature hasn't changed in thousands of years, but technology has, particularly, information technology. The internet has changed a lot. Government doesn't really react very well to that. So the idea that it'll take 15 years, maybe they can do it quicker, but like 3 years to figure out how to do a data inventory. It's like, yes, it is hard and it is time consuming and it's pretty tedious. But the fact that you don't even have that now, it's like you need to be embedding this into the process and making it happen continuously. And if you don't do that, like, quite honestly, that'll never happen. Bits of it will be more discoverable than it was. But this is really, really difficult to do well, and yes, it'll be slow. It's like, this is not a very useful, like, it's an aspirational goal, but it's not, this is kind of going about it the wrong way. You're much better off picking off a couple of specific data assets and figuring out why would you use this, and then building a capability that other people will want to come and do on their own. Trying to do it in this kind of centralized government-led way won't work, because centralized deployment of this is too slow. And that's what I think we should probably make a point of. Centralized, a central planning approach to data inventories is doomed to failure, really. The APS needs to embed the idea of a data inventory into data creation. Like a bill of material, like I'll put it in here, a data bill of materials kind of thing. Like, imagine that when you create a data set, you have to have an ingredients list on it, like we do with other products. So you have to say this data set contains the following things on it, and you have to put it on a label. And that's just required for how you do it. So any new thing that gets created has to have this sticker on it by a certain day. And then it's everyone's, like, whoever's creating these data sets or using them, it's up to them to go do it. And they have to figure that out. Then it becomes a distributed problem. So you're actually spreading the work, but you've defined what has to happen, and then how it gets done is done by those individual people. But it's done, and you set the standards for what that needs to look like. I suspect that they're not taking that approach here, and that's probably going to take too long and is likely to be doomed to failure. But anyway, Australian Climate Service. There's an idea. BOM, CSIRO, J, Geological, I think that's Geology Australia or Geological something Australia. Not quite sure. So that's Bureau of Meteorology. CSIRO, which I can't remember what it stands for. Commonwealth Science and something research industry research organisation, one of those. The Australian Bureau of Statistics to provide trusted data information capability to support the National Resilience and Recovery Agency and Emergency Management Australia. Yeah, ongoing. You think climate change is pretty much ongoing now, and this looks like this is the previous government saying, yeah, we're going to help you cope better with the fact that Lismore is floated away somehow. Emergency Management Australia, yeah, it's going well so far. Mostly it's just getting outsourced to other people who then don't actually do anything. Integrated data assets. Integrated data, multi-data integration product project. So MADIP is becoming this behemoth of stuff which everything goes into. It's just, I don't believe it's very well managed. It kind of is. Like, it's difficult to get access to it, which is fine. But we don't have very good information about exactly how, like, what information's being combined into this government spy database. It's not clear whether or not stuff is going into this that should be. Researchers love to put everything together because it makes their job easy, and they're trying to do research on stuff which they mean well, and that's fine. They don't consider what happens if someone who doesn't mean well comes along. They imagine that the gatekeepers will prevent that from happening. But if you look overseas to, allegedly liberal democracies like the United States, you can start seeing what happens when those gatekeepers don't do their job very well. Or indeed here in Australia, there's plenty of examples of what happens when, people who have possibly not the greatest or most noble motives get access to the same resources. They can do stuff with it that you didn't intend. And if you don't have enough of those checks and balances, if you don't have a countervailing power structure that will stop them, then they will do it. And there's not much you can do about it after the fact. Anywho, waste data visualization platform. Waste recycling, bringing together waste data. Okay, so this is a visualization platform. Okay, not quite sure why you need to visualize it, but modernize information about waste and recycling. This feels like a boondoggle, but maybe it's not. 4 years, so what's that? 5 million a year to virtualize waste data. I feel like 20 million could do that quicker in a startup with about 5 people. But maybe I don't understand the complexity of the waste data system. In which case, if it really is that complicated, the issue is not so much the visualization, it's going to be about the data feeds and the data cleansing, which is always the thing with data projects. That's the bit that's going to be hard. That's actually where all the value would be. So if you can get that to be clean and repeatable and have a really nice data feed that is reliable coming out of those systems, and then providing that into a format which everyone else can trust and understand, that would be cool. But again, I reckon you could do that a lot quicker. You could do that in such a way that doesn't involve creating a new visualization platform. You could just put that into an existing one like Tableau or Snowflake, and you'd be able to do that. But I don't know enough about this. I could be very wrong about that. Maybe there are very good reasons for why this will cost $5 million a year and take 4 years to do. I just have a lot of history with government projects where that really isn't true. Again, these government things, they seem to they overcomplicate simple things and underestimate complicated things or complex and fraught things. It's an odd way. It's an odd thing. Maybe it's just humans. Closing the Gap. Oh, God. Yeah, Closing the Gap has been running for, I don't know, a decade? Ages. Many, many years. And we aren't closing the gap. I put it to you that the reason that we're not closing the gap has very little to do with the lack of information. It is, what's this? Independent oversight and accountability of progress. That would be a nice idea. The information repository. CTD, socioeconomic outcome areas and priority reform areas. Disaggregated form. Okay, this is a great concern here. All right, I'm going to copy that and put this in here because this disaggregated form, including by location, gender, and socioeconomic status, that's a little bit of a worry because what we're talking about here, so closing the gap for people who don't know, this is about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, First Nations peoples. This could be useful if the information is placed into the hands of the people that it is about. This feels a lot like it could be a very imperialist view of what's going on. And this disaggregated form feels like, again, because we have generally quite small cell sizes in a lot of these areas, this is very, very much surveillance of the already disadvantaged. Algorithms of oppression, basically. Now, I have a note on that somewhere in here. Let me just put this in here. Including by location. So that's worth highlighting. Could be. This could be quite an imperialist view of approach to closing the gap. We just need to do what First Nations peoples have already asked us to do. Start with that. Do that for a bit and then see how it goes. I reckon that's probably a better plan, but, what do I know? I'm just, don't listen to me. I'm a rich white guy. I shouldn't be in charge of doing that. National Data Security Action Plan. 1.8 million. That doesn't feel like enough. Bring together, we're going to uplift data security across the economy with $1.8 million over 2 years. 900 grand a year for the entire Australian economies and national, not just the economy. Economy is one part. Phase 1, seeking to uplift government data security with $900,000. That's 2 people? Let me see, over 2 years. So at the current rates of a decent CISO working on this, so we're talking probably $150,000 to $200,000 a year, and you'd need 2 of them. So there's 400,000 out of, so that's 800. So you've got $1 million left. And they need to go and do stuff with that extra $1 million. That's not enough money. National Data Security Action Plan. There's not a lot of action in that plan. $900K a year per year is nowhere near enough to, what is it? For all of Australia. Well, I would say for the federal government. We might want to, I could put in a note here for myself to come back to later to go and look up what is the budget for example, Parliament House. Check budget allocation for e.g. Parliament House security. But we know from recent events that I mean, they're all whinging about how many staffers the crossbench will get, and that was what, there's 4 staffers, so we're talking about a budget of I don't know, let's say it's 200,000 a year per staffer, which is probably over egging it. But they're looking at saving, how much were they going to save? Like a couple of $1 million or something, and that's it. Like, really? But we're going to do the same thing for the Data Security Action Plan. Yeah, righto. Compare and contrast to the consumer data right, which is probably what we should comment on. Is it compared to, for example, the consumer data right, to, e.g., the investment in the consumer data right of 111 million. Is that over any number of years? Over 2 years? You know, I mean, that's just nonsense. National Data Security Action Plan. What a waste of time. Hosting Certification Framework. Framework will assist agencies to mitigate against supply chain and data center ongoing. Yeah, no spend. We don't care what it is. Cybersecurity strategy. That was an announceable where they were trying to, like, by 2030. Most of that was not new money anyway. That's a lie. So we can basically ignore that. Also, change of government. So this is an important thing. This is due tomorrow, but this is a strategy from the previous government. It's unlikely to survive. So there's not actually a lot of point in putting huge amounts of effort into this, but it's worth reading through this kind of action plan and find out, okay, what are you actually going to do, allegedly? The National Freight Data Hub. We're going to build a hub. Cool. Maybe it can have a portal. Data exchange. I mean, electronic data interchange has been something which has been around for ages. I mean, I can't talk about that project. Sorry. I have worked on something back in the day that is nearly 20 years ago now, to do with EDI at a national level. So the fact that there is already a National Freight Data Hub for, it's just not that one. There are others. A regional data hub. It's a hub. Yeah, pointless. So we already have the Australian Bureau of Statistics. I don't see why we would need a regional data hub. Just get the ABS to do it. They already know how to do a lot of this sort of stuff. It's add a couple of extra tables into Table Builder. Job done. Like, what exactly is this hub going to do for $13 million over and above the sort of statistics that we already collect by SA2 region in the census and with monthly surveys and other surveys? I mean, if you're going to if you want to do key economic data, give us a monthly CPI update instead of every quarter. That'd be nice. The Artificial Intelligence Action Plan. See, look at this one. This has 121 million over 6 years. Okay, so that's that's in between 126 million over 6 years. So divide by 6, that's about 2 million a year. So it's more than the security plan, double the security plan, but less than the what do we got? The consumer data right. Bollocks. Plan says vision as a global leader in developing and adopting trusted, secure, and responsible artificial intelligence technologies. Yeah, sure it does. Everyone's freaking out over AI. Most of it is 3 linear regressions in a trench coat. Or it's ragingly unethical bollocks. The then minister launched it already. Yeah, so that's already done, and that's in 2030. Like, we're going to do some AI stuff. Yeah, okay, whatever. Health, what do we got? So I'm starting to get bored reading through this one, as I'm sure you are. So before I'm losing the will to live. So as we go through this one, how much have I got? Oh, we're on page 6. How many more pages? All right, 2 pages. All right, let's have a look at this one. Normally I just scan this at quite high speed, but I'm trying to read out my way of thinking, which is very cynical, as you may have noticed. 2027, government is investing $117 million over 4 years. Real-time monitoring of the data. Yeah, enabling services to be delivered to those who need them. Improving health outcomes. Tell you what would be something that would help mental health outcomes is if it took less than 12 months to get an appointment with a mental health specialist, which is what it currently takes. I have a bunch of friends who have all been trying to get in to see someone. Like, once you need to go past just a counselor, if you need to go and see a psychiatrist, good luck. So some more psychiatrists who will actually take bulk billing patients would be a huge help, but we're not investing any money in that. Like 117 million, that sounds like a lot, but it's really not when you consider the scale of the issue. I'll have to find the stats somewhere. Like, this doesn't prevent mental health, like mental health and suicide prevention plan. This doesn't help any of that. A comprehensive evidence base. We already have one of those. It's called scientific research and medical research, which is already happening. Real-time monitoring of mental health, like, that sounds very creepy. Like, how do you real-time monitor people's mental health? That's not a thing that you want to be doing. That sounds like something that you would go and seek mental health treatment for, thinking that you are under real-time monitoring constantly from nefarious sources. Oh. Anyway, okay. 100 million over 4 years from 2021. What do we got here? Aged care. Improve aged care. National Aged Care Data Strategy Minimum Data Set. Again, we're monitoring people. Like, surveillance is not safety. It's not clear to me how looking at people in greater detail is going to help you when we just had a Royal Commission into aged care and all of the issues that it had. Maybe spend the money on fixing the things that have already been identified instead of this minimum data set. Now, admittedly, some of the stuff here is that we are not tracking certain things around outcomes of spend, but the spend, what needs to go into this is more of a, when you spend federal funds to an aged care provider, what do they do with that money? Does it actually achieve the outcomes that you spent the money for? And can you then take the funding away and give it to somebody else who then takes over the actual nursing home or the aged care facility where they are? So they stop making money hand over fist from underfeeding vulnerable old people. But again, this is not a data problem per se. This is an enforcement problem and an outcomes measurement. 4 years to build a better database, improve outcomes, health and aged care. Yeah, sure. Data analytics, enhanced data linkages. Again, there's this idea that somehow looking at more data will help us and not acting on the stuff that we already know. Like, really? I'm not convinced. I'd love for someone to convince me. Like, I know in theory, the theory is sound, but I look around me and I go, when has this ever really delivered on the promise? And particularly from government. Like, there are certain patches of it where it does, but mostly you don't just start at data. You go looking to do the stuff and then you fill in the gaps of like, oh, we don't know enough about that. So you make it's a lot more ad hoc and a lot more tactical than this sort of strategic data asset stuff. It's all very, I don't know, central planning government idea. I don't actually think that works very well. It's not a market economy approach either. It's a very, I don't know, communist central planning it's a very imperialist view. But what the format of government is doesn't really matter. It's very imperial central planning we are the data masters and we will design it and everyone will just go and do our bidding and then everything will be magically fixed by the 3 extremely huge brained people at the center. And none of you peons need to really do anything with it. It's like, no. This needs to be a much more distributed approach. Royal Commission, International Disasters, Biosecurity. So these are all ongoing. Like, So this is largely a nonsense. There's not a lot of there. So as I scan around in here, this is why I sort of scan this sort of stuff to figure out how much effort should I put into responding to this. And on the back of this one, like just looking at this action plan, there's a lot of words here, but it doesn't actually mean anything very much. So where's the document? So that's the action plan. Under here, if I hide that over there, this is the detailed version of the document, which I'm not going to subject you to because it's 69 pages. Nice. Of like, this is how everything is apparently supposed to fit together. And like the Privacy Act isn't in here anyway. This is here. Data. So this, it's all about like data, like more data shared with more people will somehow fix everything. No, it won't. Use, share. What do we mean by data? We mean information. Goodo. And dat bill. So it's all very data availability and transparency. Oh, yeah, but again, it's data about individual us and giving it to elites who then make decisions without involving the people like who actually care about this. You could go and ask them and they'll tell you what we want. They don't want to do that. Measuring the value of data, whatever. Again, so economic value of data, methodologies, yeah. Estimate the value of public sector data. So it's worth lots of money, and so we should only ever do something if it's worth money. Like, why? Some stuff is just like, isn't it nice to make people not die quite so much? You don't really need an economic reason to do that. You shouldn't. Data helps create jobs, mostly in marketing for AI companies. Goodo. Will double its employment. Space industry will double its employment. Yeah, goodo. Data benefits consumers. What about citizens? What about people who aren't just consuming stuff? What about producers? Make it easier for consumers to find the product or service that best suits your needs. This sounds like a very private industry problem. Search is a thing that happens in private industry. How is government going to do anything to do with that? Greater access to their own data. It's like, it's already mine. Gives consumers control. No, it doesn't. We can ask for our data to be deleted. We don't have control over it. You can ask, they can say no. I should probably point this out. So I might make a note of that one. So where is it? Does not consent based. Well, it's consent for whether or not you're able to send that data to somebody else, kind of. They hold this data as part of delivering their products. Correct. So it's not data. So we generated it by virtue of interacting with them. Implementation in the banking sector is now almost complete. Hands up if you've had anything to do with consumer data rights stuff, ever. CDR gives consumers control over their data. No, it doesn't. It gives you a certain amount, it gives you a small amount of control over some aspects of things. No, it doesn't. Does not mean the data will, what is that? A right for consumers to ask for the data to be deleted does not mean the data will actually be deleted. Consumers are not in control. They are the subject. They still being controlled by other entities that actually control the data, i.e. your bank. You can't delete all of your data from the bank. You can ask them to, but they won't delete it all. Sometimes it's because they're not legally allowed to, and there are reasons for why that's fine, but you're not actually in control. There's this illusion of control. Data benefits businesses. Businesses build using data as illustrative examples. This is a motivating case. No, it's just a made-up story. Supporting the private sector to leverage value. That sounds ominous. Public outcomes. Leveraging private sector data to support public outcomes. Data from the private sector helps make better decisions. This is more outsourcing, basically. Leveraging private sector data to support public outcomes. Like, yeah, you can go and buy it from data brokers, but maybe you shouldn't. And like, this is just outsourcing. This is just outsourcing and commercial purchasing of data sets or data feeds, whatever. Like, you could do that anyway. There's nothing, and in many cases you shouldn't. Some of this data should not be available. Like, location data spying on people should not be something that is available for transaction anywhere. It should be very, very limited. We're able to do things that others can't. Yes, fine. Tax collection, welfare support. Yeah, you don't really do that very well, do you? Weather forecast. Yes, we do that. There's a bunch of stuff they do. Yes, data can benefit us. Much of the time it doesn't. Accurate weather. Yeah, good. The value of data lies in its use. Okay. Not sure what that actually means. A digital atlas, box 8. What does this mean? Responding to crises. Keeping us secure. Yeah, law enforcement stuff. Closing the gap. They always trot this out. It's really, I find this insulting that this gets trotted out constantly as, oh, closing the gap. This is the thing that is going to define everything that we do. And it makes it totally fine for us to surveil people and do all this other nonsense. Yep. Staff. 5 safes, which is nonsense. I've critiqued this on a bunch. Like, this is horrendous that they're still doing this. They didn't listen to any of the people who are actually experts in this to tell them that the 5 safes is not fit for purpose, but they don't care. Should the project ever be done? No. Level of control. Intergovernmental agreement on data sharing. This is just all the governments deciding to spy on you because they all like cops. Data sharing under the DAT bill, which is the bypass of everything else. We meaningfully considered them. Yeah, you considered them and then you ignored them all. Only allows sharing for permitted purposes. And so you're only allowed to do it if it's allowed. What does that even mean? Trust and protection. Yeah, good-o. Keeping it safe, cybersecurity, data and storage, trust. Keeping data safe. Doesn't it say, is there anything in here about being trustworthy? Nope. Certification levels. That's just about whether or not you can put data in a particular place. Protective security. Yeah, this is existing stuff there. Here we go. Earning and maintaining public trust. That's a thing that we should focus on. Many drivers of public trust, including a... CDR again, because it's the only thing that they managed to do. Weirdly, they've said, we've introduced the DAT bill, which they're putting into maintaining public trust, which is nonsense. Streamline how public data is shared and enhance protections. Well, it doesn't actually enhance them because it removes a bunch of them. That was the whole point of the bill. And now the Act. Digital technologies and data systems rapidly evolve. We will continue to use, yeah. So that's just a lot of blurbage. Like, this is it. That's all that they did on earning and maintaining trust. None of this actually, very little of this talks about how it's actually going to be done. Nothing concrete about how trust will be earned or maintained. Yawn. So yeah, I'm glad I didn't really spend a huge amount of time working on this thing because it doesn't really look like it's worth it. Transparent use of data, that's a good idea. Being transparent, yeah, that's one way, but it's not the only way. Because you need to have consent, data ethics. Ethics washing is a huge drama. There's a lot of it about at the moment. There's a lot of, there are a huge number actually of data ethics things that have sprung up lately. AI ethics and data ethics. It just seems like overnight in the last 6 months, it feels like I can't turn around without a new data ethics group having spun up, because presumably there's a whole bunch of money to be made by saying, oh yeah, we'll do ethics reviews and do everything else. And a lot of the time it's just horrendous. Like it just goes, oh yeah, consider these things, and then we've done ethics review. It's like ethics is, a lot of the time it says, no, you can't do that. It would be unethical for you to do that, and you're not allowed. So you must stop. If you can't tell people that no, you can't do that because it's unethical, then who cares? It's like, oh, I considered it and I think that it's ethical. Like, so, of course you do. You wanted to do it. Yeah, here we go. AI ethics principles. Blah, 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 blah. Yep. They should benefit. Yep. What if they don't? They should respect human rights. Yep. And this is true of all systems, not just AI systems. Fairness. Define fairness. Unfair discrimination. Inclusive and accessible. Yeah, but what if they're not? Should be transparency. Yep. Good-o. Those are principles. So what? We tested them, and what happened? Found that they're relevant. Yeah, because they're generic motherhood statements that yes, they should, we should value our systems should respect human rights. What a revelation. And what happened? The ethics principles achieve safer, more reliable and fairer outcomes. Really? How? Because people think about it? I mean, good, yeah, they think about it. What happens if they ignore it? Businesses participating in the pilot expected the government to lead by example and implement the principles. Yeah, so this is the thing. Implement the principles. That's the thing. They need to be legislated. You need to have actual rules. There need to be consequences if you don't follow ethical behavior. And this is true of other things. So, like, we've got ethical behavior statements around, for example, in the medical community, the Helsinki statement, Helsinki Agreement, I think, the Hippocratic Oath. Let's just go with that one. First, do no harm. You can still do some harm if it's for the greater well-being of the patient and everything else. But there's a whole bunch of governance procedures and penalties and consequences if you don't follow the rules that have been laid down. And it can be quite prescriptive. Now, sometimes it goes overboard, but a lot of the time it's like, look, you lose your license to practice medicine. Like, you're not allowed to be a doctor anymore if you violate this stuff, or if you are shown to be super dodgy in the way that you start doing stuff, you get excluded. There are consequences. None of this talks about consequences. And that's part of the problem, I think, with this AI stuff, and certainly with the ethics stuff. Nothing in the ethics side of things regarding consequences for failure to be ethical. What happens if someone decides to build an evil robot? What happens if so? What happens if they do decide that, Asimov's three laws of robotics are something that we will explicitly violate when we build our automated death machine? Because that's what the Department of Defense is actively trying to do. We've built a drone that has tasers to go and shoot poor people, right? There was a drone company that legitimately proposed that was a thing that they would go do. They had an ethics board. The ethics board all resigned because they said you shouldn't do this, and then they all quit. they could have still done it. I believe that they stopped doing it, but there's nothing really to stop you. And in that case, so there were some consequences, mostly for the ethics board, not so much for the company itself. I don't believe, I think they had a little bit of public backlash, but that's it. And that's not enough. There need to be consequences. Privacy code. Yeah, righto. But if they don't, then nothing happens. Yep, notifiable data breach. Yeah, you have to thingo. OAIC might occasionally consider fining you if you do something totally agree. And that's it. That's all we've got for trust and safety. Harnessing regulatory technology, data quality and standards. Data integration. Yeah, so these are integrated. These already exist, and they want to link them all together more. It's not clear to me what benefit is actually flowing to the public from the use of these data sets, but that's something that I've communicated. We had a roundtable discussion a couple of weeks ago, and that was one of the things that we talked about is when you're doing these kinds of projects, you need to communicate what actually works well, not just, hey, we're doing it and it'll be good for you. You need to actually demonstrate when something concretely good does happen, and it does sometimes. You need to talk about it because that's how you build trust. You say, well, we did this small thing and it worked well, and then we're going to do some more of that. But they never talk about those things. It's always this overinflated thing of like, oh, we solved, we cured cancer. It's like, no, you didn't. Or, oh, we're going to cure cancer. It's like, no, you're not. Like it's often smaller things that are genuinely helpful for a small group, but then they blow it out of all proportion, make it seem like it's this huge thing. And then they don't talk about all this other stuff that they do, which is actually genuinely cool. Marketing problem, mostly. ABS Data Lab, Australia's data capabilities. There is lots of really good data capabilities already out there. Like there are people who are doing amazingly cool stuff. They just don't get to talk about it very much because no one really cares about science. And they don't really communicate it that well. Government's not very good at supporting it when it does happen. Other than surveillance-y things. Cybersecurity, job-ready graduates package. These are existing government. Yeah, fine. Government, existing stuff. I mean, it's not fine. It's nonsense. But okay, whatever. Data profession stream. Here we go. These are just job roles. Collaborator network. Formal APS data profession. So this is basically, we're going to say that we're going to have some statisticians and we'll have a job description for them. What? Retain and grow a data workforce. You'll need to pay them then, which, or give them working conditions that mean that they actually want to be there. I'm not quite sure. Like, fine. Yes, okay, that sounds like a good plan. You should probably do some of that. Don't know why you're not doing it already. And they kind of are. They're just tweaking. That's just a tweak. So there's not much in this. So yeah, so it's probably read too much of this, and I've gone a lot slower than I would normally because I would scan this because I wouldn't actually sit here and read it out. But generally, I just read through this stuff, take notes, and then take my notes like this, and then I try to collect them into some sort of structure. So the structure that we have of our submissions looks like this. So it's got the introduction, which is where we just summarize. Oh, there's the intro page. The introduction, which is a summary of whatever main points we have in our usual thing. A summary of the recommendations, which is just a pick list of whenever we recommend blah. There's a statement of what the recommendation is. So I try to pull those out and put them into the beginning of the document so you can very quickly scan that. The reason for structuring it like this is that the staffers who read these things, I'm trying to make their job easier so that they can quickly get to the bit that their minister or their department is actually interested in, because a lot of them, they don't care about the whole thing, or they just want to scan it and then cherry pick the good bits, and it helps them to just be able to scan through it. And then the outline should also structure, so the outline of the submission. So this is essentially a signpost. This is the map. So what does the submission look like? How is it generally structured? What do we talk about? So that, again, I'm talking to the staffer. How should you read this if you're in a hurry, if you want to just quickly scan through it? And that also helps me to plan out, okay, what have we actually covered? What do we want to keep in? What do we want to get rid of? And the purpose, so this is where I'm actually going through this. So what is the purpose of data? This is where I got to so far, which was not a lot, clearly. I wanted to talk about property rights and data, and how this property rights view of data is probably not the best way. Mostly what I'm doing here is that using a property lens unnecessarily restricts the possibilities for how data may be used. So it's taking an explicitly capitalist rather than socialist approach. It's very economic and money-centered, which is excluding a whole bunch of other non-economic reasons for why we might care about whether we collect or use data in particular ways. It might not actually have anything to do with the economy. It might just make people feel good. Now, we may be able to draw a line to the economy. We may be able to find a way to measure it in such a way that we can reduce it to dollars, but that shouldn't be our primary goal. That's where I'm trying to get to like this. And I do cite a particular report, I think, that I highly recommend reading, called Seeing Like a State, which does critique the kind of imperialist colonial viewpoint that tends to oversimplify matters. And it's been done, there's a whole bunch of historical case studies about how this imperialist view, which is essentially a central data collection view, and changing things to make them easier to measure, which is what all of this process is really going to do, and how that's a bad idea, or how that can lead to terrible outcomes because you're doing it wrong. And then we talk about the harms from data, about why we shouldn't be doing this. Like, there is a harm from over-collection and surveillance. Over-collection, actually, I might just put that in there. So there's some, like, security and safety risks, security and safety risks. From having data available to, having data that, I'll call them ne'er-do-wells, I need to come up with a better word for that, can get access to. I mean, the canonical example of that is statisticians in Nazi-occupied territories I think one was in Poland. There was a statistician there who famously, he tampered with the statistics to make it very difficult to find the Jews. He did it in such a way that it was hard to uncover. I think they did eventually uncover, and he was murdered as a result. But he, incredible bravery from someone. But he deliberately threw a spanner in the works of the machinery, which the Nazis were using, like census information. They were using that to find the Jews, so that they could kill them. So this has happened before, and multiple times since as well. It's not just Nazi Germany. It's happened a bunch of other places. Including quite recent history, like the US used census information to go and find, I think it was people of Arab descent. Again, I'll have to go and find the citation, which I do have. But it's like collecting stuff you don't need is dangerous. So you should only be collecting stuff if you have a really good purpose for it. Actually, that's what we need to have. Purpose-linked data collection. Data is not Pokemon. Data is not, data are not. Let's get into it. Data is, data are. The data are not Pokemon. You don't have to collect them all. He attack, he protect. Most of all, he collect. Surveillance state. Oops. So these are some books that I highly recommend looking at: Algorithms of Oppression, Weapons of Mass Destruction, IBM and the Holocaust, which goes through the statistics stuff that I just talked about. IBM made the machinery that the Nazis used. It's called Dayhomark back then, or the German arm of IBM was called Dayhomark. So yeah, worth reading onto that if you want a horrifying bedtime story. Surveillance is oppressive, and incompatible, what's it like, unnecessary with democracy largely. I can cite I need to put a note to myself because I can't remember what the citation is at the moment. Unnecessary surveillance, cite EU ruling regarding warrantless mass surveillance. So I might change it. So, whoops, another one. Sorry, I hit page down there. Mass surveillance. So here we go. Now I'll just show you a tip for what I can do here. Oh, it's lost. Oh, I've lost my connection to it. Never mind. Let me just reload that page. Hopefully Zotero will relink. And there we go. Okay, and woke up with the link to Zotero. So Zotero is a citation manager. I use it to remember where things were written down, and so I can cite them it automatically generates footnotes and endnotes and other stuff. It's really, really handy. So I can add a citation like this. So it just pops up. It's just going to link to my connector because it has to redo it. And now I have this little window up here where I can go search for a citation. So I can go for EU. Let's see what we had. Too many in there. Let's go for surveillance and see what we can find. Government surveillance ruled unlawful. Australia is becoming a surveillance state. How surveillance has always reinforced racism. So there's plenty of citations here that you can go and drop into things towards a national surveillance system. I'm going to have to do some more digging, so I won't bore you with that while I'm doing that. But anyway, this is how I go and find my citations of various bits of research that I've read over the years. So I'll add something in here just to show you how this works. If I want to do a citation, it would go like that. And you can see it has added the citation down here. Information age, blah, 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 blah. So it knows what format to use for stuff. Here I'm using the Australian Guide to Legal Citation, I think it is, which is my preferred one. It's done by the lovely folks at Monash University. Yeah, so we're coming up on an hour and a half. I'm kind of over it a bit, as I'm sure you are. I reckon we can probably wrap up the stream shortly. So, I mean, this is a pretty tedious introduction to how I do stuff. Maybe that was useful. I don't know. Give me some feedback through Twitter or elsewhere if you like. Let me just find my little window thing here and I'll just transition back to there. So, yeah, I mean, that's probably not the best introduction, but that was me just noodling around with playing with policy writing on a Wednesday evening. That's kind of how I approach things. It tends to be a little bit more focused when I've done my homework a bit more, but it is largely just grab the documents, scan through them, pick out the bits that you want to talk about, chuck a whole bunch of notes in a document, and then come back and put some structure around it, which is what I'll do tomorrow. And on this one, probably won't write a huge amount because I don't think it's actually worth the time. I don't think that the strategy is... I don't think it's going to create enough impact. I don't think much of it will come from it, which is why I don't think it's actually worth putting much of a submission in. I'll show willing, but it won't change much, and I don't know that it needs to change much. So it will kind of collapse all by itself because of how they've approached it, and we are engaging with a whole bunch of other things anyway. So the Privacy Act is like the Privacy Act review. That's the sort of thing where it will actually have really big impact for a lot of people and underpins so much else. That's where my focus really is. A lot of this sort of stuff, look, they're either going to do it anyway because they're not really interested in getting feedback on whether they should or not. And on this one, we've had a change of government. I think they're going to want to redo the strategy stuff anyway. And it's too close anyway. Like a strategy that's going to be, there's not really much in it to actually do that hasn't already been committed and they're going to do. It's not much of a plan, doesn't really explain how you're going to get to there from here. It's a bit of a grab bag of random stuff. So unfortunately, this is a pretty common example of the stuff that we have to deal with. and why, if we do have to submit stuff to all of these things, we run out of time to get anything else done because so much of it is just noise. But I hope this has been useful in understanding a little bit about what tech policy writing is about. And if you would like to learn more or come and help out on doing some of these, hit me up on Twitter or send me an email, justin.warren@efa.org.au. And I don't know, join, donate, give us money, help us go and do this work so that you don't have to. And with that, I think I'll take down the stream. Bye, folks. Oh, I quit out of this thing. I don't know. I'll do a fade to black. How about we do that? And then I'll sign off. Bye.